Okay. Live now to us. Let's check the group. This always takes like 20 seconds, man.
That's all right.
Whatever we say, though, will be recorded. So it's weird. It should have just a lag and say, hey, wait 20 seconds and then you're good. All right, cool. We are live. All right, FlipTrader. You might be tired of seeing me today. It's our second training with another group expert that we've brought in. And, as you're getting used to now, it's our third day of, our launch week. And our goal is to bring you the top tier education and training from the best in the business, the best in the industry. And on screen with me is my very good friend, Brandon from Los Angeles. Brandon, when did we meet? Like 8 years ago, right? Yeah.
It's going on that. Absolutely. Yeah.
Because Mare was pregnant with Ellis and she's 7. She's almost 8 years old. So it was before that. But
yeah, we had kids in college.
Right. But I absolutely love what you do. You've got a fantastic mix of the real estate agent, decades of experience, plus leadership, team leader of market centers and brokerages, team leader of your own teams, plus an extensive background in renovation, rehab, flipping, wholesaling, that kind of thing. So in the essence of education and training, we didn't want to forget about our real estate agents. So you're our guy that takes care of our real estate agents in this group, because our goal is to make our real estate agents inside FlipTrader stronger so that they have better value to go out to the investors in the market, plus their retail business. And the investors inside of our group say that agent's training, they're doing stuff. They know things more than the agents that I've been working with. I want to work with them. So we want to make sure that the connections are there inside of our group. So today we can do a bunch of different things, but really we're going to be talking about how to bring value to your investors. And we're just kicking it off with this one today. And then every Wednesday, you're going to have a curriculum where you start running through the details of how to build your retail business and how to really bring value to investors so that investors are seeking you out and you're not chasing them. Right?
Yep. Absolutely. Yeah. And I'm looking forward to that. So yeah, I think there's a big misconception around value. And, I think in our experience, just so that the audience knows, I've been a real estate agent for 30 years. So I've done the transactional business. I've done land development, built communities, 200-300 plus home communities. So I get that aspect of it. And then there's this, what's happened maybe in the last, maybe it started just a little bit before we met, Ian, but
yeah,
I think there's more people now genuinely interested in real estate than there ever has been. And just because they're interested in real estate doesn't mean that they're going to buy, sell, or invest. And so the cautionary tale is how you bring value is truly understanding who you're having a conversation with and what their goals are, right?
Yeah.
And I think when it comes to, as a real estate agent, how we built a mega team was primarily around the real estate investor. And here's a quick stat. Of the 125 investors that we regularly do business with, 94 of them have their own real estate license. And so usually and what's crazy is when I usually ask real estate agents, hey, why do you think a majority of our investors have their own real estate agent or have their own real estate license? What do you think the number one answer is?
Just save on commissions.
Yeah, save on commissions. Well, if you ask our investors, that's really not the answer. The answer is they can't find an agent worth paying. That's the concept. And
that's big, man.
It is. And then if you go to the other side of where the business has evolved over the last 10 years, I think it's really increased, especially on the wholesale side as an example.
Sure.
And I know a lot of us know connected investors and bigger pockets, and that's great. The people, I think, Ian, that are coaching the consumer on how to become a real estate investor, they're coaching them to go meet as many real estate agents as they possibly can to be a bird dog for them.
Yeah.
And not really encourage them to have any loyalty, because I think most real estate agents aren't necessarily trained on how does a real estate investment deal work first and foremost, and secondly, how to bring value to the investor. So I think this is a great topic.
Yeah, I do too. When I first started in real estate sales, I had done some flips before. I had done investing in like the mid 2000s and kind of rode that wave of 08 to 12, got my real estate license in 2012. And I was so fascinated with the investment side. And back then you can buy properties cheap. There was a lot of plentiful inventory out there. And I thought, how can I get these people to want to do business with me again? Because I don't want to keep going out and getting new business all the time. I want to get repeat business. So the value proposition is what I really worked on. And, informing people just in the plain sense, you could be doing more with your Roth, your 401k, your self-directed IRA. Like you could be doing stuff with money that's sitting, and maybe you're not going to double it. You could get way higher returns than other investment strategies potentially.
Yep.
Always risk. And then, I just started having that conversation with every single seller. A part of my script was, what will you do with the proceeds from your house sale?
Yep.
And a lot of them said, I don't know. And said, well, if I could show you a way that you could invest it in real estate, you interested? Yeah, I'm interested. And then a lot of my listing clients became my investor clients because they knew nothing or very little. Maybe they're watching HGTV or something.
Right.
And I remember one of them, I'm not going to name them, but like I pursued them for about a year. And finally I said, if I teach you how to flip houses, will you invest? And he said, yeah, that's what my wife wants to do. And I said, great. So I basically started running at my office these little mini courses on how to flip a house from I didn't do acquisition and funding because that was my job and that's me on the team. But now I'm educating this client on what to look out for and what's a good deal and what's not a good deal. And I taught myself and I got a lot of coaching around it, which is our job here, is to coach and teach, because I don't care how good you are, how much experience you have, you can always learn something. But then that client told another guy and that guy told another guy. And then all these doctors came to me and we started flipping a lot of houses and buying apartment buildings.
Yep.
And it was a great part of my business because I didn't have to go out and work for the lead. I just had to work really hard to give value.
Yep.
Yeah.
So let's expand on that, if you don't mind. Let's talk a little bit about value. Right. Value can be a little bit of subjective perception. Yeah. And then there's, I think, a little bit more objectivity. I think for anyone listening, and even if you're not a real estate agent and you're the investor paying attention, you could probably relate to this with the agents, right? So it can go both ways. Value starts with, do you even really understand yourself the opportunity to invest in real estate?
Yeah.
And that could be buy and hold. It could be flip, like you talked about. It could be other avenues and strategies. You brought up a great point with self-directed IRA. There are millions of people who don't even know what a self-directed IRA is.
Yeah.
And you're talking about trillions of dollars that are already in people's 401ks and individual retirement accounts now. So that's just the value just in being able to bring that to someone's attention is huge, right?
Yeah. Yep.
So the question is, do you understand investing? If you do, what is it that you do understand? Do you understand the buy and hold? Do you understand the short-term strategy? Do you understand, right, maybe a 3 or a midterm strategy? Do you understand the flipping part of it? Are you an investor yourself?
Yeah. That's a big one. That's a really big one.
Yeah, I think there's more credibility. So if you're an investor or you're interested in investing and you're talking to a real estate professional, does it offer credibility that they themselves are an investor? And I would say, yeah. Wouldn't you agree?
100%. I mean, that was a question that I used to not discredit, because that sounds kind of negative, but really it was discrediting other agents that these investors were talking to, especially new investors, that I would say, are you talking to anybody else? Yeah. Do they hold any property? Do they invest? Do they flip? Do they do anything in the investment world on their own? And the answer 90% of the time was no.
Right.
Because I think agents saw it as a new revenue stream or another revenue stream versus an actual wealth building tool that they could then transfer to their clients as a value proposition versus I could just sell this guy this house and I'll get the back end on it. I'll get a little on the front end and I'll get the listing. So
yeah. There's this guy known, you might know him, Warren Buffett, right?
I think I know him.
And one of his famous quotes is 90% of wealth is generated in America through real estate.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I think it's there. So how do we demonstrate that value? And I think, right, it starts out of the gate. What are you learning? What do you know? And are you learning from the right people? So I'm a believer in investing in real estate the responsible way. And I think
what is that? Because just describe that to the audience.
so I think investing in real estate means you should look at every property as an opportunity, as an investment opportunity, but it has to make sense to the person who's potentially interested in it. So like if I were to ask the audience, does anyone know anyone looking for a deal? How many hands do you think would go up? Right.
Everyone.
So I think our responsibility starts with understanding the definition of deal as it relates to that investor.
Yes.
We all have different math. We all have a different idea what the math is, right? Numbers don't lie, but they can be manipulated.
Yeah.
So I think it's critical that our responsibility, and if you've ever played with a real estate investment calculator, you can change numbers to make it look great.
Yeah.
But is there a reality to it? So for me, responsibility means you're at least taking a conservative approach, or you're thinking worst case scenario. And if it still makes sense, worst case scenario, then I feel that's a little bit more of a responsible approach to it. Does that make sense?
100%. Some of
The
the
other
best deals I ever had were the deals that I told investors to back out of.
Right. Walk away is a great power to have, right?
Yep.
And I think that at some point they appreciate that.
Yep.
The other part of responsibility for me, Ian, is the transparency part. And what I mean by that is you can't predict the future.
Right.
We all try and roll the dice, and maybe we speculate and we do those things. But I think when it comes to a property's condition, what the municipality has to say, the zoning, there's so many factors that I think our responsibility lies around being able to discover and disclose as much as we possibly can for our investors ahead of time.
Yeah.
Right. Something we learned early on with our flip investors was they didn't want us to tell them, hey, it needs a kitchen and it's going to be 20 grand.
Right.
They have their own math. You just need to describe the things that need to happen.
Yeah.
Right. That's one part of it. But I think on the other side of that, if you really want to bring value to your investor, the way you do it is, hey, I found an opportunity. It needs remodel work. You can describe the things that you feel need to happen, but describe them in a way that's painting the picture to the investor that you know the neighborhood well enough to know what the buyer is looking for and what they're willing to spend money on.
Yeah.
So it's almost like working backwards. What's the property? What's the location? What types of things should an investor do to get the greatest return? I think that's how you bring value responsibly.
Yeah. And then there's a difference between the investor that's taking a hard money loan or a private money loan and the investor that has their own cash.
Right.
Because if you think about like somewhere like LA, you could advise all day long on the best of the best of the best of the best of the best practices.
Yep.
It needs this is the buyer avatar, this is the comp, everything looks great. Then if that seller or that buyer says, all right, well, I'm doing a hard money loan at 13%.
Yep.
You go, okay, the permitting process in this county takes on average 8 months.
Right.
Or a year, right? Like you faced before. Can you hold this thing for that long, and have you run your numbers to be able to hold that for a year? And something like LA, your hold costs. I remember talking to you about some of your hold costs.
Yeah.
Like you got a $2 million fixer,
yep.
and you got hard money on 80% of that or 75% of that. Your hold cost is expensive, and that has to be factored in. And I have met so many agents in different cities around the country that never factor in the hold costs and never even ask, is this your money or a hard money or a loan?
Yep.
Which is big. And if I'm not watching that and I'm trusting an agent to kind of watch my back, that's a big hit, massive hit.
Right. And so back to that value, just in having a conversation. So Ian, if you were to say, hey, Brandon, I love this opportunity. You got me. I probably can rehab this for 50K. I still feel that it's important for me to say, Ian, I checked with my friend over at the lumber company, and he's telling me there's a little bit of a delay on things. So my question to you is, even though you have budgeted $50,000 and maybe 4 months to do it, what happens to the scenario if one, there's a delay getting things done, or there's a bigger cost down the road for you? What does that do? I think that conversation is bringing value.
Yeah.
Would you agree with that? Right.
Yeah.
And so I think, and again, I'm sure the audience can relate to this a little bit. I don't know too many flippers who actually meet the budget and meet the time frame. So what that does to the real estate agent is, okay, so Ian, if you can buy this house for 350 and I know you can sell it for 550, well, if it takes you longer to do it and you spend more money, now you're going to put pressure on me to list the property at a higher price, aren't you?
Yeah.
So
100%.
now that question becomes, can I prove it? Or more importantly, maybe my value add is during the 4 months you're under construction, I'm finding new comps to help us justify we can meet that threshold as we go. And I think a lot of agents they just expect the business when it's done and they really don't participate.
Yeah. Well, I think you and I have talked about this before. There's a difference between an active agent and a passive agent. Where an active agent is watching the market, looking at different pricing, looking at the comps in the neighborhood, and then there's also kind of like the guts and the fortitude to say to an investor, don't do that. I wouldn't spend the money on that. You don't need that kind of countertop, or you need to upgrade your finishes big time. Like, you're going in to $1 million house with basic finishes. You gotta bring these up, or you're not going to get the sale price.
Yeah.
And that active agent is working for that listing versus the passive agent who's like, cool, I got an investor flipping a house, so I'll have a listing in 6 months.
Right.
But even if somebody signs a listing contract with you right away, like they buy the reno and then they sign a listing contract with you so you can start, quote unquote, marketing the property, they can cancel that thing anytime. They don't need to go with you. You got to earn that. And I think in today's market, with the sophisticated agents and technology out there, you've got to work for those deals. You have to work for those deals. And the agents that can help an investor are almost a dime a dozen, you know?
Right. Yeah. Yeah, there is. There's plenty of it. And even what we just briefly described with helping the investor along the way stay in tune with comps and all of that.
Yeah.
I think the advanced value add for a real estate professional is to not only maybe provide you those comps, but do a little research, meaning maybe they called the listing agent and they said, hey, tell me a little bit about the buyer and the buyer that's moving into the area and where they're moving from and what they're looking for. And all that intelligence would help you finish the house the right way. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or give you comps that help you understand what other investors are paying for similar products in the neighborhood for, right?
Yeah.
Just bringing clarity to the justification of the game plan, because it is a little bit of a roll of the dice when you're in that speculative market.
Yeah. I mean, I had a process for investors that weren't using their own money, and a process for investors using their own money, where with the investor using their own money, we could go in a little higher sometimes because you don't have all that hold cost. And yes, maybe their ROI is a little bit lower. However, their money's moving,
Right.
and they're able to do so many different things with the money.
Mhm.
Or the purchase was on a loan and they're using their own money for renovation, or
Right.
vice versa.
Yep.
And so processes and systems are something that we're going to be detailing out over, all these Wednesdays that we're going to be on here live. And so the thing that I encourage agents to do is you've got to have not only a process for your sales business, which I also want to talk about, but you've got to have a process for your investor business as well. That's different than the sales process, because that retail seller is not thinking, I would say 95% of the things that an investor seller is,
Right.
or an investor period, who's going to be a seller. They're a buyer and then a seller. And you've got to know the difference and how to work with those different clients. Something else that I really enjoy was just taking the disc model, and like inside of our like client avatar in our database, I would have the disc model so that not only that I know, but all of my like VAs and the staff that were working with people, they would know the disc model of this person too. So don't call up a high D and just start like rambling, and don't call up a high I and give them real fast information. Don't call up an S and not give them details.
Right.
So that's just a little thing, and it goes a long way in terms of the rapport that you build with that client, because the average agent out there is probably a high I and they're really nice and they form this great bond. But then when it gets to investment and it's all about the numbers, that whole rapport can be negated.
Absolutely.
And you've got to know this person, this client, especially in today's market with the level of internet lead generation, the level of technology. You can find an agent fast. I mean, literally, agents are desperate to get business today, especially in crazy markets like Austin or even in LA. You know, it's like there's not a high volume market, so you really have to compete for the business.
Yeah. Yeah. We talked about this too, when how much of a two-way street really exists between a real estate agent and an investor. And if you think about the dynamics, at least in the world I've experienced it, most investors don't really want to necessarily sit down with an agent and
Yeah.
say, "Hey, tell me how much experience you have." They don't necessarily want to do that interview. They basically say, "Hey, can you find me this? This is what I'm looking for." To your point, if they're high D, it's short and sweet. They don't want to get into the weeds,
Right.
right? And even the real estate agent, when they meet the investor, is still somewhat limited in the conversation, and they hear it, but they still don't necessarily qualify it. And
Yeah.
there is a huge disconnect between creating that partnership that everybody really wants. I would say most investors who are doing this to make a living would rather not work with 1,000 real estate agents.
Yeah.
They would
Yeah.
rather work with a few quality people, gain some loyalty because they trust that real estate agent knows what their goals are and is only bringing them deals that make sense to them.
Right. To
And
them. To them.
yeah, exactly. And so something we teach when we teach some of our classes is how to build a portrait of an investor,
Yeah.
that you understand that portrait, and then you're only sending them those opportunities. You know, I still get, and I see today, real estate agents, they think they found a deal. They don't understand the math. They don't understand anything. They just see an ugly house
Right.
and they send the address to the investor and they say, "Hey, I found a deal." They don't realize all of the work that the investor has to do now.
Yeah.
Right? And if it's in a pocket or an area the investor is not familiar with, they got to do even more research to figure out whether it's a deal or not. So I think the value to you or to an investor from a real estate agent's perspective is to not send them an address, but to send them a package
Right.
that demonstrates you know what you're talking about based on what they're looking for, and it should make sense to them. And again, we're not there. So I think there's so much stuff that happens behind the scenes, and there's missed opportunity because we really just don't go out of our way to spend 10 minutes saying, "Hey, tell me numbers that make sense to you. What's your favorite kind of property? Who's your sweet spot with the buyer? What price range do you want to be in? What's your threshold? Like what if you're going to do remodel, what are you not wanting to do? Do you not want to do a roof? Do you not like to do windows and electrical
Right.
panels, right? Understanding
Right.
those thresholds is huge.
Yeah, I mean, there are some, like, I had different spreadsheets for every one of our investors that when I ran numbers, and this all came from failure, right? Because
Sure.
at first I was just, hey, this looks like a deal. And so if there was an investor that says, I want a minimum return, well, that went into his spreadsheet or her spreadsheet. And then this guy that says, I only want these neighborhoods and this type of return, and I want only full guts, the worse the better, fire damage, water damage, smoke, everything. I want the worse the better. Okay. So you're not going to send them a lipstick flip, because although it
Right.
might interest them, I'm sending them the worst of the worst. But I'm also asking them, I do have some like real quick lipstick flips.
Yeah.
Not interested. Not interested. Okay, no
Right.
problem.
Right.
But there's like a constant um conversation and communication, because people's lives change, their situations change, especially if you're dealing with somebody that's in their, let's say, their early 60s, and they're
Sure.
actively working or actively running a business. You know, you roll with them for 4 years and all of a sudden they sell their business or they retire. Well, their investment strategy is probably a little different. You got to know that.
Right.
You know,
Yeah,
you got to know that.
absolutely. Yeah, and I think to your point, it's maybe even on the flip side, their situation doesn't change, but their strategy changed.
Right. Yeah.
You know, it could be either way. Yeah, I'm really big on questions, and I'm also big on icebreakers.
Yeah.
Um, I think one of the first questions you should ask an investor as a real estate agent is, tell me one thing you love and tell me one thing you hate about real estate agents. To me, that should be your introductory question,
Yeah.
because I think that investor is going to give you a good concept of where you should have your conversation after that.
Yeah,
Um,
I'm dropping that in the chat. That's a great question.
I really do feel it's important. I still do open houses even in the traditional world, and I still ask that question to buyers that come through the door. And I'll tell you the two most common answers from the consumer. The first is they don't like pushy salespeople,
Yeah.
and the second most common response is they don't like agents who don't have any experience. They're looking for people who have experience.
Yeah.
So if you're a newer agent, that's tough, right?
Yep.
But you can still say you have experience. And again, back to, if you really care about real estate investing and you care about building wealth and doing things right, you're automatically going to attract the type of investor you want anyway.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
And I think the other thing that we're going to be getting into as we break down the different categories of one of your trainings, CIAS, which is a designation, by the way, for all the realtors that are, or agents, even investors that are watching. Like, I think what you've built there is the most complete. And I've seen it over the years. Like, I think I first saw it in 2018 when you came out
yep.
and taught at our market center. And then reviewing it in the last couple months, like, it is robust and it gives every detail that an agent needs to build their business. But
Right.
having a um, uh, an understanding of what the agent actually wants to do and serve, you
Mhm.
know, who the agent wants to serve in the market is pretty important as well. It's not like agents will ask me, like, you know, why should I pick an avatar? Why should I pick an ideal client? I say, because you got to focus your lead gen strategy on something, not many things.
Yeah.
Every single person is not your ideal client. Every single town in your area is not your ideal location. You
Mhm.
got to focus and specialize, or the guy that's spending $250,000 a month on internet advertising is going to get in front of your people. They're going to.
You need to master something. And
Yeah.
I think where agents get lost in the weeds is they're looking at anyone who says, I want to buy, sell, or invest as an opportunity to close tomorrow. And that's not how it works, right?
Right.
I do feel, because of our efforts in mastering what we do for our investor clients as real estate agents, there were several things that happened over the years because of that, Ian. And that one of them was, we became the go-to team.
Yep.
Investors knew they could count on our math and they could count on our opinion about what they should or shouldn't do. They appreciated the fact that we could say, I don't know that I would do that right now.
Yep.
Right. I would never make a decision for an investor, but we would definitely have really good conversations. But the other part of it that came to fruition was the credibility factor also meant, if we were representing an investor trying to purchase a property and it was in multiple offers, those listing agents would definitely consider our offer, even if we weren't the highest, because they
Yeah.
knew we would close.
Yeah.
And there were no games to be played, right? So 100% of that.
That's a great point you're making, because and that's why I want people to really pay attention to is your reputation, not only with the investor, but with the listing agents, because the listing agents go, they want to get paid. That's what they want. They want to do great for their client. They want to get paid to sell a house. But like, there's two different aspects there, which is, does the listing agent trust that your client's going to close, and do they trust that you got clients that aren't just playing games, that they will close, they are actually serious about investing? That's
Yeah.
a really big piece
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
pay attention to.
Yeah. I mean, even in a negotiation, even if you were the listing agent, um, obviously I'm representing the buyer and I want to protect the buyer's position. But I didn't have a problem saying to you, the listing agent, listen, if you've got more or you've got better offers, I don't mind staying in backup. I don't mind if you call me when the deal blows up,
Right.
because, again, sometimes I've played that game too. You have to be the highest because the listing agent doesn't know what they're doing or they don't
Right.
understand. And you have to play the game of being the highest, going under contract, and then coming back and asking for a haircut.
Right.
but I just believe in the disclosure part of that. I still don't have a problem, right? And so I think that back to our conversation about value, I think the value is really understanding the situation, even in a negotiation
Yeah.
of how to play your hand.
Yeah. So two questions I want to ask you, because we're establishing this foundation for our real estate agents and investors inside this FlipTrader group to know that they can come to us for really granular information that fills
Yep.
in the gaps for them. So one is, if somebody's watching this and they're like, "Well, I'm a newer agent, or I'm newer to the investment world," how can they get started? Just a little quick plan. And then the other one is, for those agents that are watching that have experience, that have worked with investors, maybe have some of their own properties, how can they increase their value proposition to just get way ahead?
Sure. So I would say if you're newer to investing in real estate or working with investors as a real estate agent, be okay going on the journey of learning. Be okay not always being right. Get out of your ego. Don't have this insecure feeling. Just understand, right? So when we talk about building a book of investors, so if you're newer, hopefully you're already going to maybe some networking events and you're talking to more experienced investors. Maybe you're meeting people on this channel that are experienced, and you're okay saying, "Hey, Ian, I'm learning and I'm curious. Would you answer a few questions? I want your knowledge. I want to be, but ask permission," right? I think it
Yeah.
goes a long way to be there and be on that journey. And if you're experienced, it's about doing a quick self check. And are your investor clients really happy with you? Are you asking the question, are they happy with their assets and how they're performing? Do they have any fears that you can help them overcome? And you touched on it earlier, like, how much do you really know about self-directed IRAs? And can you introduce that to your sphere and create more business for yourself? So,
Yeah.
and to your point, I think what we want to do is be a resource no matter where you are in the journey, to not have a fear of being able to ask for help or direction on where I should or shouldn't go to get that confidence or the experience that I need, so that I'm doing this the right way.
Yeah. One of the things that I did as an experienced agent, and this is me plugging Brandon, by the way, this isn't Brandon's job on here. This is me plugging, is I was an agent for 6 years, lots of flips, lots of investors under my belt, lots of retail deals under my belt. And when you rolled out CIAS, certified investor agent specialist training and designation, I not only did I want to take the course, I brought you to the East Coast to our market center to teach other agents, which I think is another aspect of learning, which is, if you teach it, you got to learn it, right? If
Sure.
you want to be an expert, you got to learn it. And
Yep.
so I wanted to learn from you how to be a great investor agent, and then I wanted to be able to teach it in my market center and to other agents, especially on my team, to make sure that they were stronger. So I
Right.
want you to talk a little bit about CIAS, because again, this isn't a pitch or plug. I just think it's really smart the way that you have compartmentalized all these different aspects. Again, it's granular, just to fill in the gaps for an existing experienced agent, but also for brand new agents to get a full, like, detailed step-by-step guide on how to be really valuable to investors.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. Well, it's been a blessing, that you and Mara are in our lives, and
Thanks, man.
you're a hustler. You work hard, and I think what people should admire about you, Ian, is that you're not afraid to continue to learn, or you're not that person who thinks you got it all figured out. And I know, right, as a man, as a husband, as a father, like, those things are really critical, right?
Yeah.
And I think that to your point, whether you have experience or not, there are things that we can learn from each other. And I'm going to add one more thing to this, because part of what we teach in CIAS is how to build your investor bench, meaning not a list of investors, that's your investor database, but do you have good attorneys? Do you have good CPAs? Do you have a good 1031 company? Do you have these folks? And I have found that if you really sit down with your vendors, 9 times out of 10, they're not the right person anyway.
Agreed.
Just
Agreed.
because you have a CPA doesn't mean they're the right CPA and they understand your strategy. They just file your taxes, right?
Right.
So to your point, I think what's great about the certified investor agent specialist designation class is it's a very well-rounded class that teaches agents the whole history of investing in real estate. We do a great complement to people who are diverse and they have stocks and bonds and mutual funds and all of these things, because there's we don't want it to be necessarily competitive. We want it to be balanced. And then we really do, I think, a great job of helping you understand the numbers, the math, the different portraits or different types of investors that are out there, the different types of properties. But we really get into the strategies behind creative financing. And, people are worried about interest rates as an example. And I know a lot of investors who aren't worried about interest rates. I think when you're talking to people who are worried about interest rates, you're talking to people who aren't motivated to buy or sell. And that's probably
Yeah.
not we call that practice. If you want to
Yeah.
practice real estate, you can do that, but it doesn't always pay the bills.
Yeah.
So I think what we get in our class is the newer agents, it's like a fire hose, but the experienced agents or investors who take the class, um, it's either a reminder of something they should be doing. Maybe it's an affirmation of something they're doing really well.
Yeah.
But I think we're all somewhat limited in our growth and our mindset sometimes. And I know this is where you're wanting all of us to go. And that's, how do we scale?
Yeah.
How do we grow? Well, if your foundation isn't built, if you're really not confident about the conversation you're about to have with someone, here's another thing I find interesting with real estate agents. And we had this in our class yesterday. We have a section on your legal obligations and limitations. And what I find interesting is we're all told as licensed real estate agents that you're not an attorney or an accountant or a tax advisor.
Yeah.
I get it, but you're still having the conversation.
Yeah.
So you still should understand the contract you're asking somebody to sign. It doesn't mean you have to be an attorney, right? So I
100%.
think what we teach is how to take ownership of what it's like to work in the real estate investor space and be okay with it. And I think that the more investors trust you, the more they're going to refer business to you, the more going to do business with you. And that's where I want us to be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Especially in the next, like we had this conversation at dinner a month ago when I was in LA with you. Our conversation was about, in the next 3 to 5 years, the industry will change maybe the most drastically or dramatically that it's changed ever.
Right.
Even more than the digital, the digital MLS versus the books that they dropped off at your brokerage and everybody read through them,
Right.
It will be game changer. Plus you got people that were overpaying for properties like crazy. And so they don't have equity. And when life situations happen or things change in their lives, they're going to need to sell, and they're going to need to be able to trust and count on somebody. And the foreclosure market is going to be a big deal. And the distress market is going to be a big deal. And so prepping now and understanding how to do this, how to run your business, how to offer value, how to work with investors is going to be crucial to the next 5 years if somebody wants to really not only stay in business, because that is a factor, but really grow their business and have something sustainable that isn't this wave that they kind of ride, like most real estate agents kind of ride this wave. And, if you talk to 80% of agents, they'll say it's the market, it's this. And our response is it's training and education. It's awareness, it's communication, it's understanding what your client needs and how to navigate them through this market, especially if they need to sell or buy.
Sure.
And that's why this is so crucially important to the type of content that we're putting in this group, because we're going to be able to be a part of the growth of agents in the industry over the next 3 to 5 years.
Yeah. And they say you're the average of the 5 people you hang around the most.
Yeah.
Right. Here's another nugget. If you want to, I'm big on questions, right? For real estate agents. Here's another question I think you should be asking everyone. Doesn't matter if they're a traditional buyer or an investor. And I think it is simply this: when it comes to real estate, who do you follow and who do you pay attention to? What channels do you read? And the reason that's important is I think you want to size up the person in front of you and their perception or where they're getting their information.
Yeah.
Because I think there's a drastic difference between people who follow Dave Ramsey and Grant Cardone.
Big time.
Okay. And so I think sometimes we start information puking and we don't really know, is that good or bad to the person we're having the conversation with, right?
Yeah.
And so to your point about the industry changes, I think it's critical that you start understanding these things. There's a stat out, and I can't remember the article right now, but there's a stat out. The top 20 real estate influencers on YouTube, out of the top 20, 16 of them have never bought or sold real estate.
Huh.
So
just regurgitating information.
You have people that are influencing who you could argue maybe shouldn't be the ones that are influencing, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I think for our audience, I think it's really important that we as a group trust each other.
Yep.
We share the information, and even if we have to debate it and dissect it, I think that's healthy, right? Because there's things that are going to be going on, and I'd rather us not react to it. I'd rather us be ahead of it.
I agree. I think one of the things we talked about before we came online here was taking one of the Friday podcast episodes and just doing this is what's going on in the real estate industry and the markets, and doing like a more of a high level industry conversation versus like a localized market conversation, like targeting and focused on the real estate agent in the industry and how to operate. Like I went on an appointment with a client that I met at an open house in 2016, still calling me. I still follow up with them. Right. And I'm not even active real estate agent for 2 years.
Right.
But I still follow up, and, you just never know. And he said, text me, hey man, I want to, thinking about maybe selling my house. Cool. And I said to him, like 50 real estate agents. I'm coming. I'll meet you Saturday.
Right.
Why'd you call me? And he said, dude, I just know that you'll hustle the hardest for me. There might be people that I know more and they're going to get their feelings hurt or whatever, but I know for a fact that you'll tell me the truth and you'll hustle hard. If I decide to sell, it's the best option for me.
Yeah.
You'll hustle your ass off to get my house sold.
Yeah.
And I trust that you're going to give me the best option. So here's the other thing that agents should know in today's market, like the changing market or the changing trends, like short-term rental. I said to him, here are 3 options. Like I used to give 3 options, like, well, you can do nothing and here's the price. You can do something and here's the price. You can do everything and here's the price.
Mm-hmm.
The conversation we had was, okay, here's what it looks like to sell. This is the comp. This is what I think you can get. Got to do a little work, around the edges, whatever. And I don't think that that's what you need to do. And he was like, that's what I wanted from you. Why not? And I said, because you don't have to sell. And he goes, so should rent it. And I said, I actually don't think you should long-term rent it. And here's why. And I gave him some data. And then I said, here's the other thing that I'm thinking about. There are a massive amount of short-term and like midterm rentals in need in this area. And you have a great product. It's not just some junky house. It's a really great product, very marketable, and you're willing to leave your furniture because you don't need it. So I think if you want this kind of ROI on the money you've already put in, a midterm rental or midterm insurance rental would be absolute best case scenario for you. And he's like, never thought of that. Okay. So what did I just do? I just added, and granted, any real estate agent could come in and talk short-term, midterm rental, whatever. But the way that I presented the information was, here's the choices that I think you have, because there's a trust factor. And then I also paid attention to time frame, right? Yep. Which is, well, we're not going to do anything right now because you're not ready. And he goes, why not? I said, because on the first conversation we had a month ago, that you wanted to keep the house through Christmas and the end of the year for your kids to come spend Christmas with you. So we're not going to do anything. And he goes, can't believe you remembered that. And I said, of course I remembered it. I wrote it down, dude. That's important to you.
Right.
And so that will be potentially a first quarter deal. And maybe I don't get anything out of it.
Right.
But I get a ton of referrals out of it, which is awesome because I told the truth and I did what was best for the client. Now he's also an investor with me too.
Yeah.
And he said to me, what's the market looking like? You think I should put some money in? And I said, Hold tight, dude. Just hold tight right now. Let's see what the last quarter of this year looks like, and let's jump on this thing first quarter next year. Let's let it do a little bit more data, and then we can make a really great decision. Plus, I think there's some other states and cities that you might want to look at investing in. They're a little bit better than some of the markets that we're looking at, around here.
You know, what's interesting is you said the other T word, truth. I said transparency earlier. And there's a company out there. There's a great podcast. If you guys don't know who Mike Samuelson is, he owns Altos Research. What I like about Altos Research, I'll just give him a quick plug, is he provides us data that's a week old, where most of the resources we read are 60, 90 days old numbers, right?
Yeah.
But he interviewed the owner of a company called 1,000 Watt, and 1,000 Watt is a consulting company. And in that podcast, what was great and what I got out of it the most was, of all the surveys that they do for the consumer regarding real estate, the number one thing for the consumer right now was they wanted their agent to be honest. And what I mean by that is, when they say, how's the market doing? Most agents say what, Ian?
Fantastic. Great.
Amazing. It's never been better. La, da, da, da. They want to hear that it's tough. They want to hear that there's some challenges out there. They're tired of getting smoke blown up their ass.
Yeah.
And so I think investors have always been that way. They just want you to be sincere and honest. But I'm telling you guys right now, if an investor knows more than you and they're asking you a question pretending that they don't know, and you answer it wrong, your credibility is out. Yeah, it's out the window.
Shot. And it probably will never come back.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Probably never come back.
Yeah.
Oh, I totally agree with that. There's a missing in the market, and plenty of other industries have it. There's a missing in the market for truth and transparency in this industry.
Right.
Because it's, everybody's, used to riding this wave. I mean, think about if you were in Austin in 2020 and 2021.
Oh,
you bought a house in January in Austin in 2021 and for $350, and in September, somebody gave you a $650 offer. You're like, okay. And the real estate agents got used to that.
When I went to Grand Junction, Colorado 3 years ago, the median price for a single family home was hovering around 280.
Yeah.
When I left last month, it was 420.
It's crazy.
Yeah. So,
and is it sustainable? And we can talk about that on another like deep dive episode. Like that's the thing is one thing I got taught, I don't remember what coach it was. He said, how do you answer the question, how long have you been in the industry? Because I started getting coaching like right away.
Right.
And I said, my dad taught me to say, some days it feels like forever.
There you go. That's a great answer.
And he goes, I never heard that one. I said, I mean, you think about it, you're not lying. You're telling the truth. Some days it does feel like forever. But the the other thing he said was, just if somebody asks you how the market is, just tell them it's extraordinary.
Well, it's supposed to be unbelievable. We were talking,
or unbelievable, unbelievable.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, because then they're going to ask you another question. What do you mean by that? Well, it's down and it's a little crazy. You're looking to buy, it's a good time. You're looking to sell, hold tight, and then you can hit a truth bomb within a couple sentences or transparency within a couple sentences of meeting somebody who's, I never enjoyed when somebody would say, oh, Ian's a real estate agent, you should talk to him. Because I didn't want to be known as the real estate agent at a party, or one of the real estate agents at a party or a get together.
Yeah.
But I liked being known as the guy that will shoot straight with you, as the agent that will shoot straight with you. And so that's kind of the reputation that I built was, I definitely don't think you should sell if you don't have the money to rehab it. Like, you're going to get smoked in the market. It's just not the right time. But here are some options. We could come in and put the money in. I mean, I have plenty of clients that said, we don't have the money, but we need top dollar. And I go, cool. Well, would you be willing for me to come in and invest in your house? I'll do the renovation, and then I'll get my money back and split profit with you or whatever. And they go, yeah, I'd love to do that. And so you got to know your stuff though. You can't go into a situation where not only you spending your own money, but you're in charge of a project and you completely screw it up or your comp's up. You got to know what you're doing.
Yeah. You agree with that. Well, I think we brought this up at dinner too. What I teach real estate agents when they're asked how the market is, I teach them to say, that's a great question I get all the time. Why do you ask?
Oh, that's a good one, man. I like
And
that.
the reason is, if you think about, you guys, I don't know, some people might remember when they were dating, or maybe you're dating now. When you meet somebody for the first time, it's just chit chat. They don't know
Yeah.
what else to ask you.
Right.
And so when someone you meet for the first time asks you how the market is, and you go on a 30-minute rant, they're probably, that's not really what their intention was. But here's
Right.
what I will tell you. If you're looking for deals and you tell the person asking you how the market is, how amazing it is, and they're in foreclosure, they're not going to tell you they're in foreclosure,
No.
which
No.
is another. But you also said sustainability, and I will tell you this. After 30 years of being in real estate, I've sustained.
Yeah.
And one of the best things that you can do in where I think we're going is truly understanding not just the value that you need to be bringing to your investors, but be okay that your value might be different for each investor.
Yeah.
And so the challenge you have is, can you identify the value you need to bring? Because if you were the investor, Ian, I would be saying to you, I don't want to bring value to you. I wouldn't say it that way. What I would say is, Ian, I want to earn the right to be an extension of what you're doing.
Yep. Great line.
And I want, a certain level of professionalism. And it's ironic when you say things in a professional way, you're also qualifying how professional that investor is or isn't.
Yeah.
And you should be able to pick and choose who you want to do business with. And if you're an agent out there taking on everything, that means you don't have your business dialed in well enough to be able to pick and choose. And
Yeah.
you gotta get there and master a few things, right?
Yeah. Agreed. Totally agreed.
Yeah.
All right, dude. I'm gonna wrap this one up because we could talk for hours on this. It's funny because I said to the Yun who was on earlier talking about mindset, we were just rapping back and forth.
Yeah.
And this is fun because I think somebody can get a lot of value from anything that we're saying. Again, we're going to fill in the little gaps. This isn't about rolling a boulder in. This is about the sand between the cracks. That's what our job is right now. And then we start rolling in, because that's the foundation. And then we start rolling in the next layer and the next layer. So as we continue on every Wednesday, hopefully you'll stick to this time if it works for you.
Yep.
We're going to be diving into a lot of the concepts and topics that we talked about and giving really deep level information on those silos so that real estate agents not only can build their business, they can really get this investor thing down and be that person on the other side of the next 5 years who goes, glad I paid attention, glad I was seeking out information because it helped me build a sustainable business. Or I think, dude, I think 50% of the agents won't be in business, and not the type of, California has 600,000 agents and 10% of them do business, or, this is like, you're going to get rid of your real estate license or put it on referral status and not be in business anymore because there's just,
and I agree with that. But I want you to know there's over 500,000 people enrolled in online schooling right now.
Yeah. Well, that's the other side, the fill-in.
So I think we always have attrition. I think we're going to see more of it.
Yeah,
for sure. We can continue that. The other thing, with your permission, if it's okay, depending on the topic, I want the audience to know we're going to try and provide some takeaways too, rather than just a conversation.
Yeah.
So we want to be able to offer that for you guys.
This one will be our podcast episode. This one will just be a podcast and just an introduction to you. And just, I like people to know the person and gain some trust that they're not just going to come on and try and pitch them some shit. And, so this was, I thought, a great conversation for people to get to know you. Plus they're also getting to know me and inside the group. And I'm not just some, random guy or hack, like making shit up or reading off of realtor.com.
Yeah.
I've been there. I've had successes. I've had failures, learn from them, keep moving forward. Had tons of fear, had tons of.
Well, I think the biggest thing is you're human, and that's good. Right. But I do agree with you. And for the audience, who's just now paying attention or watching these things, it's FlipTrader is good. It's a good thing that they have you, Ian. This is great. So
thanks, man.
Yeah.
Appreciate it. We're building something really great here. And I know you and I have been talking for many years of how to figure out how to combine our strengths and help other people out. And I think we finally nailed it.
Yeah, this is good. I'm excited. So looking forward to more. Yeah.
Me too.
All right, buddy.
All right. Well, Brandon, thanks, dude. Appreciate you. Appreciate your friendship too, dude, man. Your mentorship, your friendship. Like, I appreciate everything. You and Tammy have just been so great to me. And love every bit of it.
We appreciate you too, bro. Looking forward to the future. Yeah.
Thanks. And for FlipTrader audience, thanks for another great episode. Thanks for watching. Thanks for, being in this group and being a part of this thing as we grow this amazing platform of education and training for real estate investors and agents. And every Wednesday, Brandon's on. We're going to rock and roll every Wednesday. So you got this where you can go back and watch. We're going to put it on YouTube. It'll be a podcast episode, plenty of opportunities. And next time Brandon and I talk next week, we're going to be going deeper into his courses and his designations, and you'll have opportunity to do anything you need to further your education and training. So thanks everybody for watching, and I'll catch you on the next one.